You don't summon your destiny with wishful thinking. You summon it with what you refuse to look at. The world doesn't chase your hopes. It chases your scent. And if fear is the strongest thing you carry, it leaves a trail you can't outrun. You think coincidence explains why the same kind of people keep finding you, why the same knife keeps finding the same scar. But there is a law at work, older than your intentions and deeper than your plans, the quiet law of the unconscious. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care what you say you want. It feeds on what you hide. We like to imagine our lives as open roads, chosen by free will, bright with possibility. But watch your own days carefully. Track your tiny choices, your hesitations, your sudden impulses, your repeated mistakes. Watch how you go toward what hurts you and call it fate. Watch how you avoid a conversation until it becomes a conflict. Watch how you try to be safe and end up trapped. Then tell me this isn't gravity. Fear is gravity. It pulls everything heavy in you to the same low places over and over, until you think gravity is the shape of the earth, rather than a force you can learn to navigate. Jung said, "The thing you don't make conscious will run your life." He said it simply, and that's why it hits like a hammer. Most people mishear it and turn it into a slogan about positivity. But the unconscious isn't swayed by slogans. It communicates in images, in impulses, in sudden stabs of emotion that make you move before you know you're moving. The unconscious doesn't care that you say, "I don't want to be abandoned." It doesn't understand the word, "don't." It hears abandonment. It feels the childhood memory you never named, the night your body learned that attention disappears and love leaves. It then orients your eyes toward the familiar shape of that sensation, and you walk toward it for the simple, brutal reason that the body prefers the pain it knows to the peace it doesn't. That's why people attract what they fear. Not because the universe is cruel or because life is scripted against you, but because the inner machinery is patterned. Fear sharpens attention, and attention directs behavior, and behavior arranges reality like furniture. You pick the same chair because it looks like home, and home is the most dangerous word for anyone who grew up inside a storm. You find the same kind of partner who confuses affection with unpredictability because your nervous system equates confusion with love. You seek the same kind of boss who wields ridicule as motivation because shame feels like your native language. You walk into the same arguments wearing new clothes and claim the fashion changed the plot. It didn't. The law of the unconscious is not mystical. It is mercilessly practical. Imagine you're a lighthouse, but instead of shining, you broadcast a radar of unspoken fear. "I can't be alone," you hum without hearing yourself. "I can't be rejected. I can't be seen failing." People who benefit from those signals can hear them the loudest. Your fear of being alone attracts those who keep you half-loved. Your fear of rejection attracts those who know how to withhold approval like oxygen. Your fear of failure seduces you into endless preparation, an invisible wall that keeps you safe from succeeding because success would expose you. Each fear engineers the behavior that fulfills it. Each fear writes stage directions you follow without reading them. Look at the patterns you keep calling bad luck. The friend who never supports you again. The deal that looks promising but stalls at the same point again. The timing that seems cursed but is actually your own hand pulling the emergency brake. We tell ourselves beautifully crafted lies to avoid seeing the one truth that would free us. It's embarrassing. And that embarrassment is why we hide, and hiding is why the unconscious remains in charge. The shadow loves the dark, not because it is evil, but because light would make it evaporate. The part of you that learned to survive by not being seen is excellent at staying under the radar. You call it prudence, you call it humility, you call it keeping the peace. It calls itself the director. There is a deeper violence we commit against ourselves than anything anyone ever did to us. It's the violence of refusing to admit what we feel. Anger handled dishonestly becomes compliance. Fear handled dishonestly becomes control. Loneliness handled dishonestly becomes performance. We smile instead of saying, "I'm scared." We say yes instead of saying, "I want." We chase status to escape vulnerability. We become the kind of person who makes promises we don't intend to keep because we need to hear ourselves pretend. Then we wonder why we attract people who promise and disappear, why we attract roles that require masks, why we find rooms where volume matters more than truth. The unconscious loves symmetry. It partners you with your reflection until you stop averting your eyes. Consider pride. You don't need to announce pride. It speaks with silence. Pride says, "I will not be weak," and then it argues with reality every day that you are human. Pride rejects tenderness, so tenderness avoids you. Pride calls emotional risk a luxury, so intimacy learns to bypass your address. Pride sounds like dignity but acts like armor, and armor is magnetic. It summons arrows to justify itself. If you keep wearing a shield everywhere, the world will keep handing you battles to prove you're right. And if you fear humiliation, if you fear being seen in your ordinary imperfection, you will build a castle of performance where every compliment is rented and every criticism is a demolition crew. The castle is beautiful. The castle is lonely. The castle is a shrine to fear with good lighting. The most common mistake is confusing control with safety. We try to control outcomes to prevent pain. We anticipate people's reactions. We hoard information. We orchestrate conversations to steer them away from the cliff. It works for a moment. Control feels like competence, but the body keeps tally. The tighter you grip, the more strain you create in your presence, and strain is contagious. People feel they can't breathe around you, or they feel strangely compelled to rebel. Either way, your attempt to avoid pain becomes the reason you create it. You are afraid of losing power and become domineering. You are afraid of being controlled and become rigid. You fear anger and become a magnet for it. The unconscious loves paradox. It gives you the very thing you fight by making fighting the main activity of your life. Ask yourself this, not gently. What is the thing you would rather defend than discuss? What topic makes your voice change, your eyes drift, your arguments multiply? That is the door. It has rusted hinges and a simple lock. The key is confession, but not the public kind, the private one, the quiet, unspectacular admission that you are still haunted by a hallway you swore you grew out of. That admission is not glamorous. There is no applause for it. But it is the only moment the law of the unconscious begins to bend. Not because saying it changes the past, because naming it gives your hand back to you in the present. And hands are how we build. If you want to understand why you attract what you fear, you have to understand the shadow. The shadow is not a villain lurking inside. It is simply the collection of everything about you that you decided, often long ago, was not allowed, the traits you were punished for, the feelings that got you iced out, the impulses that earned you shame. You silenced them for good reasons, survival reasons. But silence doesn't kill, it buries alive. And what is buried alive grows in strange directions. It leaks into your choices as if those choices were spontaneous. It enters a room before you do. It writes your text and hits send while you're still thinking. And then you ask, why does this always happen to me? As if you weren't carrying the script in your back pocket. The law is simple. What you refuse to own owns you. What you suppress does not disappear. It delegates. It finds a job somewhere else, in your relationships, in your work, in your habits, in your posture, in the way you apologize too much, in the way you never apologize at all, in the way you keep choosing puzzles you already know how to solve so you can pretend you're growing when you're actually performing competence on a loop. The unconscious likes loops. Loops are safe. Loops are predictable. Loops save you from risk. And they cost you your life. You want to stop attracting what you fear. Stop pretending you're unique in your darkness. You are not. There's nothing special about the chaos that made you. What is special is the attention you can bring to it. The willingness to sit with the ugly memory without turning it into a brand. The integrity to say, I flinched, when you flinch. The courage to disobey your own alarm system without disowning it. Fear will still talk. It always will. But it will no longer drive. We live inside mirrors. Some are made of glass. Some are made of people. The ones made of people are the trickiest because they answer back. They mirror your posture with their boundaries. They mirror your stories with their actions. The unconscious uses other people to show you a side of yourself you do not want to acknowledge. That's not mystical karmic theater. That's basic communication, often painful. You project the emotions you can't handle onto the nearest partner, the nearest friend, the nearest colleague. You accuse them of what you won't name in yourself: neediness, cruelty, deceit. Then you find examples to confirm your accusation, because the mind is a magnet for evidence that protects its narrative. Congratulations. You have designed a self-fulfilling prophecy and called it human nature. But this is the dark secret hidden under the dark secret. You're not doing it because you're awful. You're doing it because it's efficient. It is less expensive to put your fear in someone else's hands than to hold it in your own. If you can say the world is untrustworthy, you never have to trust. If you can say love always fails, you never have to love. If you can declare ambition as corruption, you never have to risk your hunger. We turn our fears into moral conclusions so we can feel righteous about our avoidance. That righteousness attracts equal and opposite forces, either the cynical who will join your parade of nothing matters, or the predatory who see your leash and start walking you. A manipulator doesn't need to be smarter than you. They only need to know what you refuse to lose. If they can find your fear of abandonment, of poverty, of embarrassment, they don't have to move you. They just have to step aside and watch you move yourself. Fear is already a leash. That's why the work is not to be fearless. Fearlessness is for statues. You're alive. The work is to become stubbornly honest about what fear has done to your posture, your tone, your choices. To become repaired not by pretending you're invincible, but by refusing to negotiate with your own humiliation. If you can name your leash, You can unclip it in front of anyone. There's a naivety we must bury. The belief that life will stop giving you the same exam once you've memorized the answers. Life doesn't care about the answers you recite. It cares about the person you become while you are terrified. It will keep presenting a pattern until you stop flinching at it, until your nervous system can sit inside it without reaching for a mask. When you can experience the sensation you fear without acting from it, the pattern loses fuel. That is not an inspirational line, it's a mechanic's manual. Fear requires reflex. Interrupt the reflex, and fear becomes noise. Listen to the pattern of your breath in a hard conversation. Do you hold it when someone raises their voice? Do you laugh when something cruel is said to keep the peace that doesn't exist? Do you start explaining too much when you hear doubt, trying to sell yourself into safety? These are the Morse codes of fear. They broadcast far more than your words. People respond to them without knowing why. The boss decides you're unsure and piles on oversight. The partner senses your panic and pushes the very button you tried to hide. Again, not because people are monsters, because human beings respond to atmosphere, and fear creates storm weather even when the sky is clear. Loneliness is the quiet assassin. Fear of it produces behavior that guarantees it. You cling when you need to be anchored in yourself. You perform charm when sincerity would have been enough. You demand certainty from someone who is still deciding if they trust you, which pushes them back in self-protection. You punish yourself with stoicism to look strong and become unreachable. Then you call it bad timing. No, it's perfectly punctual timing, powered by dread. Loneliness thrives on the rules you impose to avoid feeling it. The way out is not to flood your life with noise. It's to become someone who can endure the sound of their own heart beating in an empty room without labeling it failure. Then, when you choose company, you do it from fullness, not hunger. Hunger attracts dealers. Fullness attracts equals. There's also the fear of power. Many carry it secretly because power exposes you to judgment. Power makes you visible, and visibility is the stage where you were humiliated once and vowed never again. So you play small and call it modesty. You dull your language to avoid mistakes and call it being responsible. You hand the microphone to lesser motives so you can listen to your own talent and say, "See, it's not that I couldn't. I just didn't." But the unconscious doesn't care about your alibi. It turns your fear of power into habits of passivity, which attract people who love making decisions for you. Then you resent them for being decisive. The cycle is delicious for the part of you that would rather complain than grow. It is hell for the part of you that remembers exactly what you were meant to do. Self-deception is the architect of despair. When you tell yourself you're okay with less, long enough, you forget what more even felt like. When you tell yourself you don't care what they think, while obsessing over it, you rot from the inside quietly. When you insist you are over the past, while your body has memorized the exact temperature of every room where you learned to hold back, you create a split between your mouth and your marrow. That split attracts experiences that amplify the dissonance. The job that doesn't match your skill, the love that doesn't match your temperature, the life that doesn't match your blueprint. Not because you deserve mediocrity, but because you keep hiring it to avoid the anxiety of your real size. Let's talk about truth. Not the kind that earns applause, The kind that makes you lose followers, friends, fantasies. Telling the truth about what you want is risky because wanting is vulnerable. Wanting exposes you to loss, but wanting also calibrates your life. It sets your compass. The law of the unconscious responds to clarity like a tuning fork. When you lie to yourself, your signal is mud. You attract mud. Muddy commitments, muddy opportunities, muddy friendships where nothing is said plainly and everything is implied. When you stand in a clear statement, I want this, I don't want that, the fog lifts and you will lose people. Let them go. They were companions to your shadow. They were mirrors for your avoidance. Your fear of losing them kept you in a life that was losing you. Now, manipulation. People romanticize it as rare, but anyone can manipulate if the stakes feel existential. You can manipulate. Innocently, maybe. You exaggerate your pain to pull empathy. You shrink your success to avoid envy. You present yourself as helpless to make someone feel strong. It works. It also recruits hidden contempt. The person you trick senses something and never trusts you fully again. That sense wraps around the relationship like plastic. You can still see each other, but nothing breathes. That suffocation is the consequence of using fear as currency. If you transact with fear long enough, you forget how to ask for anything real. You become a market of pretense, selling and buying illusions until you don't know how to eat actual food. The only way back is a fast. Stop feeding on approval. Stop trading in pity. Stop worshipping at the altar of your image. Starve the false. Let it fall. The real is waiting behind it with less applause and more oxygen. Jung warned about possession, not by spirits, by complexes, patterns of energy that overtake you when triggered and make you believe you are them. Call it what you want, an old story, a part, a wound. When it takes the wheel, your life looks like something happens to you. You are suddenly 13 in a 40-year-old body. You say words you don't mean. You break what you cared about to avoid feeling what you fear. Then you come back to yourself and call yourself crazy. You're not. You were occupied by a loyal soldier trained to protect you. Appreciate the intention. Retrain the method. How? By noticing earlier. By feeling the first heat in your neck and calling it by name. By breathing into the moment you would usually flee. By choosing a sentence that reveals instead of conceals. It sounds small. It is atomic. Atoms change worlds when enough of them align. There's a myth that healing makes you soft. Real healing makes you sharp, not cruel, clear. Fear blurs, truth sharpens. When you stop negotiating with avoidance, you develop edges. The kind that cut through manipulation calmly. You can say, no, without delivering a sermon. You can say, I need, without apologizing. You can say, I'm leaving, without vilifying the person you're leaving. You stop attracting predators because they can feel that your lines are real. You stop attracting chaos because you stop feeding it. You may still encounter it. This is life, but you won't offer it a bed. And if you do, you'll notice quicker. You'll leave quicker. The law of the unconscious never vanishes. It becomes your ally. It starts broadcasting strength. The hardest part is mourning the person you were when fear was king. You built entire seasons around avoiding pain. You made friends in that weather. You built skills. You wore certain clothes. You learned to speak in a way that snuck you through doors. Letting that go can feel like betrayal, but it's the opposite. It's fidelity to the truth that you are allowed to outgrow your past without hating it. The child in you was brilliant at survival. The adult in you must be brilliant at living. Those are different arts. Survival contracts. Living expands. Expansion attracts pressure. That pressure is not an enemy, it is the weight that gives your muscle shape. Why do we keep returning to the same pain? Because repetition feels like safety, and safety feels like kindness, and the unconscious confuses kindness with anything it recognizes. If you grew up with volatility, calm is suspicious. If you grew up with neglect, attention feels invasive. If you grew up with perfectionism, love feels conditional, and you will make sure it remains conditional by performing even when no one asked you to. These patterns are not moral failures. They are instructions written during emergencies. Nobody gets through childhood without some emergency. So here we are, grown, still following emergency protocols, while trying to build a life where we aren't constantly hiding under a table. The law of the unconscious will keep routing you to the basement until you bring a lamp down there and do inventory. Inventory is unglamorous. It means opening boxes labeled ignore. It means holding the old embarrassment without turning away. It means admitting the one time you hurt someone on purpose just to feel powerful. That admission is the taste of iron in your mouth you avoid every day with productivity and jokes. But there is freedom on the other side of taste. You cannot be blackmailed by what you refuse to hide. The most manipulable people on earth are the ones who are desperate to look good. The least manipulable are those who have confessed their own ugliness and still chose to live. That's not cynicism. That's sovereignty. Notice the tiny betrayals that keep your fear well fed. The promise you made to yourself last week and broke silently. The way you look for a sign before you act. Instead of making a decision and letting the sign be that you made it. The way you ask for advice when you already know the answer because the answer will cost you comfort. Each tiny betrayal sends a memo to your unconscious. We cannot be trusted. And the unconscious listens. It then locks every door and floods your thoughts with reasons to stay small. Rebuild trust by doing small, precise, unflashy things you said you would do. Lean into ordinary bravery. Showing up, speaking plainly, leaving on time. Admitting ignorance without shame. These are the daily miracles that reroute your fate. You might be waiting for permission from a mentor, from a parent who still lives in your head, from a metric posted by strangers. Waiting is sometimes useful. More often, it is fear dressed in a suit, describing itself as prudence. While you wait, life keeps placing replicas of your earliest lessons in your path. The teacher you always wanted, the one who gives you approval without effort, does not exist. The teacher is your resistance. The teacher is the discomfort of the exact conversation you rehearse and avoid. The teacher is the rejection letter that invites you to become devastatingly good instead of comfortably decent. Opportunity is not an open door. It is a test of whether you can bear being seen walking toward it without pretending you don't care. People will interpret your efforts through their own fear. Some will call your boundaries selfish. Some will call your clarity cold. Some will call your growth changing. They are right. You are changing. The cost of becoming is the grief of not remaining. If you listen to the wrong interpretation too closely, you will attract critics into the council of your decisions. Then you'll be living for a jury that meets every night in your head, endlessly deliberating, never reaching verdict. That is how fear wins. by outsourcing your life to imagined voices. Those voices are powerful because they were once real. Someone once told you you were too much, too little, too loud, too quiet. That early pronouncement turned into your weather report. It's time to fire the forecaster. You get to choose today's climate. You get to declare what is true and build around it, even if your hands shake. Look at the ways you numb. Sometimes they look moral overwork, caretaking, non-stop planning. Sometimes they look simple, scrolling, sugar, gossip. Numbing is often fear's most loyal friend. It keeps you from sensing the exact discomfort that would lead to action. The irony is that we numb to avoid pain and end up maintaining it. You don't have to become ascetic. You don't have to reject pleasure. Pleasure is a teacher, too. But when your hands reach automatically for the thing that blurs your edges, pause. Ask what fear is asking you to avoid seeing. Ask whose face appears in your mind the moment before you anesthetize yourself. Ask what conversation you owe your own reflection. The answer will not be dramatic. It will be uncomfortably obvious. That's how you know it's true. Now, the question everyone asks at some point: how do we stop attracting what we fear without pretending fear disappears? The answer is ruthless attention paired with compassionate practice. Not transformative, overnight. Not miraculous, ordinary, sustained attention. Sit with the urge to fix someone else instead of rescuing them. Let your hands shake and do not assign meaning to the shaking. Say, "I am scared," without adding, "but I'm fine." Make a boundary and stick to it the first time, not the fifth. Tell the truth without dragging anyone to the gallows or yourself to the cross. The point is not to punish yourself into purity. The point is to prove to your body that fear can be felt without dictating reality. Once the body believes this, your signal changes. You no longer smell like prey to your old patterns. Courage isn't loud. Fear is loud. Courage is the steady hand that turns down the volume and says, "We are doing this anyway." Not recklessly. Not to prove anything. Simply because the cost of avoidance has become too high. If you want to see the law of the unconscious work for you rather than against you, become the kind of person who approaches the thing that terrifies you with open eyes. If you fear rejection, ask clearly for what you want from someone who can say no. If you fear failure, choose a task where you might fail publicly and do it sincerely. If you fear conflict, have the gentle confrontation before the resentment becomes a wildfire. Each time you do, you teach your nervous system a new truth, that survival no longer depends on repetition. Freedom does. This is where motivation becomes discipline. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the hand that keeps the fire. Fear will always be attracted to flame. It will try to smother it with what-ifs, with scenarios where you are humiliated, abandoned, exposed. If you let fear write the script, you will create exactly what you dread, scene by scene. If you take the pen back, you will still sweat, still stumble, still sometimes bleed. But the plot will become yours. That matters more than winning. Because winning without ownership is just another form of losing. The trophy becomes your new leash. The applause becomes your new home, and you will do anything to stay in it, even if it means never speaking a sentence that costs you. The world is not neutral. It responds to your posture. If you approach life like a beggar, eyes down, voice low, you attract alms. If you approach life like a tyrant, jaw set, heart closed, you attract uprisings. If you approach life like a maker, curious, measured, honest. You attract materials. The unconscious tunes you toward one posture or another based on your private truths. That's why the most radical thing you can do is stop lying to yourself about what you fear and what you want. The lie is a leash. The truth is a map. It may lead you through a valley you didn't plan. It will lead you out. People ask for guarantees. They want to know that if they face their fear, they'll be rewarded. There are no guarantees. Sometimes you will do everything right, and it will still fall apart. The reward is not the result. The reward is the absence of self-betrayal. When you stop betraying yourself, you stop participating in arrangements that make betrayal necessary. You stop calling manipulation strategy. You stop calling boredom stability. You stop calling fear prudence, and begin to call it by name. Then, when it speaks, you can say, "Thank you," and place it gently in the passenger seat. It will point out cliffs. It will not decide where you go. Think about silence, not the absence of noise, the presence of attention. The silence where you hear your own edges. If you fill every silence with distraction, you will never hear the map. Fear hates silence because silence has time to notice. Practice noticing. Not everything you notice will be flattering. It will be real. Real is worth more than flattering. Real makes you strong in a way that no performance can replicate. The world respects the weight of the real. It aligns with it. People who are also building with the real will find you. You will repel those who need your mask, and you will attract those who are allergic to masks. That is a trade worth every loss. Do not mistake this for a promise that pain disappears. Pain is part of the contract, but unnecessary pain, the kind manufactured by avoiding necessary pain, can end. When you stop fueling it with secrecy and pretense, when you stop hiring it to keep you safe, it loses its staff. It may knock. You don't have to open the door, or if you do, you can listen like a host, not a hostage. You can say, "Yes, I know you. I know your stories. I will not be arranging my furniture around you anymore." There will be days when you relapse into the old dance. Forgive yourself without letting yourself off the hook. Study the steps. See where you said yes when you meant no. See where you over-explained because you feared being underestimated. See where you acted clever to avoid being sincere. Learn. That is the one thing fear cannot digest. Your willingness to learn. It wants you rigid. It wants you to believe that your identity is your history. It wants you to say, "This is just who I am." No. This is who you have been. You are allowed to be new. One more thing. It's easy to hear all this and turn it into a war with yourself. Do not. You cannot conquer fear by beating it. You can only claim authority over it by understanding it. Fear is the part of you that remembers the fire. It is trying to keep you from burning. It just doesn't know that you have learned to hold heat. It still thinks you're a child in a house with no exits. Show it the door. Show it the skills. Show it the colossus you earned. Show it the people who are safe now. Fear will argue. Let it. Then act from your present, not your past. When you move this way, something shifts in your aura, not an invisible magic, but a biological certainty. Your eyes change. Your shoulders settle. Your voice carries the tone of someone who can survive a no. That tone is unmistakable. It attracts a different caliber of attention. The needy disappear not because you hate them, but because you stop offering the service they were buying from you. The bullies lose interest not because you scare them, but because there's no theater in you to perform against. The opportunities you kept missing show up with less sparkle and more substance. You will mistake them for ordinary. That's how you know they're real. People around you will feel the shift before you fully do. Some will get uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is a weather vane. It tells you which direction your old agreements are blowing away. Let them. Release roles that required your fear to keep playing. Let go of rewards you earned by catering to dread. Drop the identity that made you loved for the wrong reasons. It will feel like walking out on a stage with nothing memorized. Trust yourself to improvise. Truth adores the unprepared if the unprepared are honest. There is a grace in admitting you don't know, in voicing the raw need, in asking for help without turning it into theater. Grace is a quiet power. It attracts solidarity instead of saviors. We have to talk about accountability, real, not punitive. Accountability is the bridge between insight and change. Without it, the law of the unconscious keeps writing your story in old ink. You might be waiting for a revelation to transform you, but the truth is, responsibility is the revelation, accepting that you are both the architect of your patterns and the demolisher of them. Not alone, never alone, but not helpless. Helplessness is the lie your fear tells to remain employed. It says, I am in charge because you are small. Prove it wrong in small, tangible ways that cost you comfort but pay you back in sovereignty. Keep your word. Keep your boundaries. Keep your heart open when saying no. Let your yes mean yes with a spine. There is a fierceness available that doesn't require rage. Rage is exhaust. It burns hot and leaves you empty. Fierceness is quiet momentum. It holds the line without spectacle. It listens carefully and cuts through nonsense like a blade through cloth. This kind of fierceness is what you attract when you stop living as a reaction. Your life stops being a protest and starts being a presence. The room adjusts. The opportunities adjust. Even your enemies adjust, because there is no space left for the petty to stick. You will still encounter betrayal, envy, misunderstanding. Welcome to being real, but you won't make a home there anymore. You will pass through clean. If all of this sounds ruthless, it is. Compassion without ruthlessness becomes enabling. Ruthlessness without compassion becomes cruelty. You are after the marriage of both. The tenderness that sees your oldest pain and doesn't mock it. The sharpness that refuses to let that pain decide your schedule. This is how you change your signal. This is how you stop attracting what you fear and start drawing what strengthens you. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped letting fear sign your contracts. Imagine a night walk. The street is quiet. You can hear your shoes on the pavement. There is a corridor inside you that looks exactly like this walk. Dim, a little cold, full of echoes. You've avoided it. You filled it with noise. But if you keep walking, you'll find a door. Behind it is nothing dramatic, just a table, a chair, paper, a pen. Sit. Write the sentence you've been avoiding. I am afraid of, and finish it without editing. Then ask, what would I do today if I were not trying to prevent this feeling? Then do a fraction of it, not the whole, a fraction. Tonight, you will not be saved by thoughts. You will be saved by 1,000 small acts of alignment. Fear will still talk. Let it narrate. You have work to do. In the end, the law is faithful. It doesn't punish. It reflects. It asks, what are you committed to beneath your words? If you are committed to comfort, it will send you illusions that soothe you while stealing your years. If you are committed to truth, it will send you teachers disguised as problems until the disguise is unnecessary. If you are committed to strength, it will send you weight. Lift it. Your back will ache. Your hands will shake. But you will become the kind of person whose presence tells the world, I can hold what I ask for. The world listens to that. The world rearranges for that, including the world inside your chest. So why do you attract what you fear? Because fear is a prayer said in the language of your body, and reality answers the language it hears. Change the prayer, not by whispering pretty words over the wound, but by going in, hands steady, eyes open, and finally feeling what you've used a lifetime to avoid. On the other side is not a perfect life. On the other side is a real one. That is enough. That is everything. You are not a victim of fate. You are an author with a page still blank. The ink is uncomfortable. The ink is honest. You have enough of both. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If this made you think deeply, make sure you like this video, share it, and subscribe for more.